The Atlantis is probably the second best purchase from the 14th anniversary bundle, which is saying something considering how influential the Ahawani has been, which I'm waiting to record last because I wanted the console to get fixed first. The Atlantis has a strong argument for being the best recursive shearing ship in the game, even outpacing the D7. There are arguments to be made that the D7 is still better for that type of build, since it can use ISO mags instead of just exploiters and locators. However, you will be down one bridge officer trait compared to the Atlantis, since the D7 only has 4 bridge officer stations. It's also significantly less flexible than the Atlantis because it has a commander engineering, so if you opt not to do a recursive shearing build, then you're stuck with just beams. The Atlantis, on the other hand, has a commander tactical seat, so if you opted not to do recursive shearing, then you could just do regular scatter volley or rapid fire, and there is a strong argument to be made that you might want to do that sometimes, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. These two ships, the Atlantis and the D7, are also the only two ships in the game to have both a commander temporal seat and a lieutenant commander intel, which allows you to get override subsystem safeties 3 in addition to recursive shearing 3. If I had one nitpick though, and it is an unreasonable one, it's that you can't get recursive shearing 3, override subsystem safeties 3, and a rank 3 cannon firing mode all in the same ship. So I opted to go for a rank 2 rapid fire to go along with a theme of a single target build, since that's really what recursive shearing shines at. The Vincent Kish duty officer on, who can sometimes upgrade a rank 2 firing mode to rank 3. It didn't trigger nearly as often as I hoped though. You could do cannon scatter volley or beam fire at will rank 3 in order to get more AoE, which in general is just better in this game, but then you sacrifice part of what makes recursive shearing good, which is that it hits really hard on a single target. I think if you were going to be building this ship to just do general content like story missions or public QTFOs, then I might go that route anyway, just to ensure you have at least one person in your group who can do effective AoE damage, and then the recursive shearing is just the cherry on top for those big targets. Whereas if you're in a coordinated group run where you know other people have the AoE damage under control, then you can focus in on a purely single target build to really drill down on those big HP targets. Okay, let's talk about the accessory package, starting with the trait, which is one of the stars of the show here, temporal tunneling. Once per 15 seconds, activating an exotic damage ability or any temp op ability will give you 100% firing cycle haste for 5 seconds. That amounts to a 1/3 uptime, and it is absolutely phenomenal. There is a small chance that you will squander it since it is a small window, but overall it's extremely powerful, and I think it's going to end up being a top 7 trait for energy weapons going forward. The console disassembler emitter gives you both energy weapon and exotic damage Cat 1 boost based on your EPG and energy weapon training respectively, which is to say that your EPG skill will boost your energy damage and your weapon training skill will boost your exotic damage. This is purely playing into the Dusai crowd, and if you're into that kind of thing, even though mechanically the way the game is designed, Dusai just doesn't really work that well, then this is the console for you, plain and simple. The clicky creates a cone that grows in front of you to really an astonishing size. The cone gets pretty big. It deals radiation damage and applies a damage reduction debuff to enemies, so it's pretty useful. I don't know that I would use it outside of a Dusai build, but it is pretty good. The experimental weapon, on the other hand, is pure garbage. The focused particle cannon. It drains aux power and deals radiation damage based on your aux power and EPG. And the thing is, there's only 2 science ships in the game that have an experimental weapon slot and either temp op or intel seating, and that's the Section 31 Science Destroyer and the Mir Crossfield Science Destroyer. Now, those are okay ships, but I'm struggling to think of what ship I would actually put this on. And if you're not going to put it on a science ship, then you're trying to do Dusai on a ship that doesn't have a secondary deflector, and maybe I just don't know enough about Dusai, but to me, I just don't see where you would ever use this. All ships benefit from speed, all ships benefit from engine power, So why wouldn't you just use the Soliton Wave Impeller even on a build where you're trying to do Dusai? Coming back to the theme of single target versus AoE, the real problem is that even though I felt like I was shredding through my targets very quickly in this ship, and it made me feel very powerful with the right setup, because there are so many small targets all the time, it still felt like a drag, like it was taking forever to get through the content because I had to target all of these enemies one at a time. And I did a disastrous ISE run where no one had a competent AoE build, and even though I did the most DPS and we got through it, it just took forever and it was very unpleasant. So even though it's a very powerful ship, arguably better than the D7, certainly more accessible and better value, it has a great trait, I would just caution you against throwing a single target build on it immediately, because you're only going to want to do that in situations where it makes sense. After the last video, I'm not going to comment on the looks of the ship anymore, so I'll let you make your own decisions on that.